What do you do when you're trying to build a culture of respect, high performance, accountability, and fun? We say a Super Bowl culture, but that culture you want to build is challenged by that person whose work is great, but their mindset, how they behave, is below the bar. We'll talk about that today. I'm Jeff Garrison, and this is the Results on Purpose podcast.
Welcome to the Growing Leaders Podcast, powered by Results on Purpose. If you're a small or mid-sized business owner or a part of a leadership team, this podcast is built for you. We share ideas and stories to help you grow into the leader your business needs.
Let's get into it through 3 quick, real scenarios. And then let's talk about what's actually stopping you and what to do instead. Here's the first scenario. I have a custom manufacturing client, and in our first quarter working together some time back, we defined the mindset they wanted running through the company. Specifically, how does everyone's thinking need to overlap in a way that manifests in how they treat customers, each other, how they approach their work, and how they face challenges, and so on. Their best fabricator, genuinely the best hands on the floor, pushed back and told the owners they were headed in the wrong direction. Quality production had always been the only standard he needed to meet in the past, but he understood that he was going to be held accountable for his mindset going forward as well. In the second scenario, we have a client service rep who had been servicing north of $1 million in billings a year. Her clients loved her, but she's also difficult for her peers. If there's anything she doesn't like, she adopts a pouty and passive-aggressive behavior that makes others around her uncomfortable. One of the leaders told me almost apologetically, she's going to work the way she's going to work. She keeps the billing up, so, don't talk to me about anything else. And the third scenario, well, that's mine. So years ago, I owned a recruiting firm. And I had a producer, the third largest in the company, who was excellent at the job, but would bring personal issues into the office. A combative edge that had nothing to do with placements and everything to do with whatever he was carrying that day. I'll be honest, it took me way too long to deal with it, and I wasn't equipped to step into the conversation without making it worse at that time. We've got 3 different industries, 3 different companies, but each have the same challenge, like many companies, and that's that they have a person that somewhere along the way came to believe that being excellent at the craft meant that the rest of the rules or behavioral norms were optional for them, or at least that they could get away with poor behavior. So we need to know that there's a price to be paid when we tolerate poor mindset or behavior, even though a person is getting good results. So let's talk about some of those costs. With my manufacturing client, the person that they were dealing with opted to leave pretty quickly once they had set a new bar on things. He actually left within days. Naturally, the owners felt some relief, even though he was really good at what he was doing. And in fact, everyone felt better. They also realized that they probably lost a few good employees along the way because of this guy, and they also learned that they were about to lose another one when this stuff took place. So that the past turnover, probably lower production overall, absenteeism, and the leaders getting pulled away from bigger things to deal with stuff in the office had easily cost tens of thousands of dollars, perhaps a lot more over time. In the case of my recruiting firm, I pulled up to the office one day and felt a giant weight. I didn't want to go in. It was because I didn't want to have to deal with whatever that person was going to bring that day. So 20 years ago, I didn't have the wisdom or the skills to do a reset, so I just fired him. I guess it was fortunate that I didn't wait any longer to make that call, or I would have lost my second biggest producer too. an amazing person who'd already been interviewing because he didn't like coming to work there anymore either. I know I lost tens of thousands of my own production as well as the rest of the staff's. In these first two scenarios, there was a real hidden cost. And before I share what happened with the client service rep, let's talk about what should be done. And let me be really clear about this. This next part is about you, if you're the leader. This is a leadership problem, not an employee problem. If we fix the leadership problem, the employee problem gets fixed too. So here's what I actually want to spend some time on, because hold people accountable is advice you've heard 1,000 times. And if it were that simple, none of these three situations would have gone on as long as they did. What actually stops leaders isn't a lack of advice. It's head trash, the stuff running in your own head that talks you out of the conversations before you ever get to have it. I'll spend a few minutes on the head trash that leads us as leaders to tolerate this stuff, but I'll also put a link in the show notes to an episode with a deeper dive into this head trash specifically. So behind the excuses for tolerating poor mindset is a fear that it won't go well and the person might quit. We don't say that part out loud. Instead, we think, well, it's a bad time to address this. In other words, we're too busy to be without them right now. It's a bad time of year, for example. That's one piece of head trash. Another is that we think no one else knows how to do their job. In other words, they're irreplaceable. That's another piece of head trash. It's not true. We can figure it out pretty fast. Another piece is that we think they're going through something hard personally. In other words, once they work through their own stuff, they'll come back to work with the right attitude and behavior. And all of these things may in fact be true, but at the same time, they are head trash. So here's the thing about that head trash. It never announces itself as fear, whatever you might be afraid of. It always shows up dressed as something else, like patience, loyalty, not wanting to overreact, waiting for the right time. So, and that's what makes the head trash so effective. You don't feel like you're avoiding the problem. You feel like you're being a good leader about it, right up until you look back and realize how much it actually cost you. So let's talk about what to actually do. And it starts before any hard conversations ever happen. The first move is creating clarity around your company mindset, your shared behaviors. The same thing we did with the manufacturing company. You can't hold someone accountable to a standard that was never actually made explicit. And, most companies have values on a wall and maybe their website, but they're not really in the company DNA. What you need instead is real clarity on what it looks like when someone is genuinely living the mindset and what it looks like when they're not. Without that, every accountability conversation starts as a debate about whether the standard even exists. With it, the conversation starts as a much simpler one. Here's the standard. Here's where you are. Here's how you close the gap. By the way, we have a process and tools for this at Results on Purpose. The second move is to give people feedback, good or bad, as soon as they deserve it, every single time, not just when it's convenient or when the stakes feel low enough to risk it. This is where all three of these situations actually broke down. Nobody gave the fabricator real-time feedback in the moment his attitude showed up. Nobody addressed it the first time the client service rep got inappropriately passive-aggressive with her peers. And I didn't say anything to my producer the first time his mood showed up in the office. I waited and let it become a pattern instead of a single correctable moment. Feedback delayed doesn't just lose urgency. It teaches the person that behavior is tolerated because your silence is data to them. If you go quiet, they hear this is fine, whether you meant to say that or not. We also have a tool that walks through exactly how to do this consistently. And the third move is the one that actually protects everything you just built. For the long-term good of the company, the mindset has to be non-negotiable. Not negotiable for your newest hire, not negotiable for your best multi-million-dollar biller or one of your largest producers. Here's the line I keep coming back to. If your standards don't apply to your best people, they aren't real standards. They're suggestions for everyone except the people who feel too difficult to replace. Now, non-negotiable doesn't mean you fire someone the first time they slip. It means the standard itself never bends, even when the person in front of you makes bending it feel tempting or safe or reasonable. The moment you make an exception for your best performer, haven't protected your best performer. You've quietly told everyone else what the real rules are. So non-negotiable doesn't mean infallible, though. Sometimes what looks like someone else's mindset problem is actually a clarity problem you created. And here's what that looked like with the client service rep. This scenario is interesting because when the leaders actually examined the role she was in, they realized they were asking more of her than of her peers. She had the largest and most challenging clients. Her role fit into a different category. And what killing it looked like in that seat was genuinely different than for her peers. The misaligned performance expectations were actually contributing to the mindset gap. Now, the leader owned their part. They updated the performance expectations and had the conversation about the mindset gap at the same time. It led to a great outcome for everyone. And that leads me to the last thing you need to do. You need to develop your own skills. Creating clarity, coaching, and giving feedback are in large part skills. You have to have the heart and desire to be a good leader, but it starts with creating clarity. It's a simple idea, but it's not an easy one. You have to articulate well, consistently, and often the expected mindset, the company's way of thinking and behaving. And you have to hold people accountable to those expectations with feedback and coaching, and occasionally an invitation for someone to leave the company. So let's go back to the question we opened with. You're trying to build a culture of respect, high performance, accountability, and fun, because that's what makes a great company. It's that Super Bowl culture. And somebody whose individual work is already great is testing whether that culture actually applies to them. The honest answer probably isn't that you need a better strategy for that moment. It's that you need to catch the head trash that's been running before you even get there. Get clear on the mindset ahead of time. Give the feedback the moment it's earned. And hold the line as non-negotiable, even when it's your best person standing in front of you. So as you think about what we've talked about, ask yourself, what am I not doing that is contributing to any mindset or cultural issues in my company? And what skills do I need to develop to start to change that trajectory? Again, I'm Jeff Garrison, and this has been the Results on Purpose podcast. If you like what you're hearing and think that coaching might benefit you and your leadership team, reach out to us at resultsonpurpose.com, or you can find me, Jeff Garrison, on LinkedIn. Also, if you like what you're hearing and think you might like to be working with leadership teams on this kind of thing, perhaps becoming a Results on Purpose coach would be a good move for you. If you're curious about what that might look like, again, visit resultsonpurpose.com and go to the Become a Coach page, or find me on LinkedIn and reach out and we can have a conversation. See you next time.